So today we're going to be taking a look at the Future World Borders Part 2. Now, at the time I'm recording this, it might sound very weird. I'm quite bunged up. I've got a cold. My throat hurts every single time I speak. But I'm just going to have to go along with it, and I need to pump these videos out. So yeah, in the last one we saw Russia. Oh, that is the wrong tool. We saw Russia annex Kherson, Zavzumzia or something, Luhansk and Donetsk and those regions. So the Ukraine used to look something like this. They're not as big as that, but now they've got these borders here with Russia, which aren't bad borders. They don't look horrible, but they still look really weird to look at. Like it'd be alright if they had on the coast, but no, it just looks weird. We also had some sort of war go on in East Africa, with the formation of the East African Federation. Ethiopia gained land because they gained Somalia, which collapsed, and then also lost land to Eritrea and a tiny bit to Sudan. Egypt finally has control over the Nile, which is good. And I think the last thing we saw happen was, Serbia got NATOfied, and we saw the Chinese Civil War break out. So yeah, we're going to be taking a look at some more tensions rising and some more battles going on across the world. Now, we do see a lot of tensions rising in the Middle East, as it looks like a huge war is about to sort of, break out. So this huge war will involve quite a lot of countries. Now, this war will involve countries such as all of these guys except for these. Now, what actually happened? So, Iran basically starts politically attacking Saudi Arabia and Turkey for basically lining up troops across their border. This basically angers these two, and they start calling their allies to sort of back them up. So Oman, UAE, Qatar, who doesn't like Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Israel, Jordan, and Lebanon. This Turkey calls in Georgia and Azerbaijan, which then deters Iran to sort of call in their allies. Now, these allies are Yemen, Qatar, Syria, Iraq, and Armenia. Now, we're taking a look at Egypt. Egypt has been sort of CSTO-ified, so they don't like Saudi Arabia. So, yeah, they don't like Saudi Arabia, but we're going to see what happens. So, Egypt joins the red team. Now it's a bit more balanced, kind of. We have Palestine joining the red team. And here is all the sides. Let's take a look at what's going on. So, first of all, we see Qatar get completely wiped out, and Omanian and Saudi Arabian troops cross over into Yemen. They push down and cut the country into two, taking the capital city, which I don't know what it's named, and Yemen capitulates as they're quite a weak country. We then see some battles going on up near Armenia, as the Armenian-Azerbaijani war takes a huge step, and Armenia is completely captured. With basically Iran losing two allies already, this isn't looking good for them. Now, to rub in the pain, they even lose Palestine, which is the worst thing. Egypt, though, has their troops ready, and they push over into Jordan and parts of Saudi Arabia. They push up and take Jerusalem and retake Palestine and completely capitulate Israel. Israeli rebels don't really like this, though, so they break out in Palestine and northern Israel, and they just have to sort of fight it out to get their independence back away from, or drive out Egyptian troops. The Egyptians continue their spearhead, trying to cut off sort of these regions here from the rest of the country, which does go successfully, and they push up and cut them off. After a long time of fighting, Jordan surrenders, and Saudi Arabian troops are captured. With this, Iraqi troops managed to cross over the border and take Kuwait, as well as pushing down and taking a lot of the coast. Iranian troops land in Qatar and take out the UAE and bits of Oman. And yeah, now you're probably wondering, why is the blue team getting slapped? The blue team are really strong up here, not really down here. I mean, Saudi Arabia is the strongest, probably followed by Israel and Oman and UAE, and then Qatar, yeah. So the blue team does start to organise some sort of counter-offensive of Lebanon in pushing down and basically linking up the two sides again. That's what they do. The Turkish push into Syria even further than they already are and meet up with the Lebanese troops. And Lebanon, now that it's been completely surrounded by blue territory, isn't really a big threat of being invaded. Syria is just a mess, so they collapse within the first week, and an invasion into Iraq is started. They do meet Iranian troops, which does slow down the invasion, as the Iranian troops take the panhandle of Azerbaijan and push up and take Baku. They push in, and eventually this is the front line we see, with Turkish troops holding out along this front line here. Now, if Turkish troops did want to invade Iran, they'd have to go through all these mountains here just to get to Tehran, which is here, and it'd be a pain for them. So Turkish troops are now trying to organise to get a front through and maybe link up supplies, but that doesn't look like it, as Turkey doesn't share any sea access with Saudi Arabia. So what happens? So Turkey is put a halt. They start pushing to Jordan, but that goes okay successfully, sort of, and a little push into Saudi Arabia. But they're sort of halted, as now it's going absolutely chaotic down here. So the red team continue to push along the Omani sort of peninsula and eventually capitulate the entire country. They push in and free Yemen, but Yemeni troops, or Yemen, is just really violent and they all get gunned down, so they just end up having this area under their influence, and sort of western Yemen just is a huge mess, so they just decide to stay out of that bit. Saudi troops do manage to beat them back though, as they are staying out of West Yemen, as Saudi troops have basically got it all under control, and Yemen is basically going to fight out and not let the red team capture them. Managed to capture all more of the coast and drive out all Iranian troops. With this kind of helps Saudi Arabia get back on their feet, but not in the north, as they're continuing to get pushed down. The Egyptians now start a push down the coast in order to get to the capital city, Mecca, which I think that's what the capital is, and they push over and eventually manage to capture the capital city. With this, Saudi Arabia just begins to fall apart, as they've just got little territories now. They lose region after region, with the country absolutely dominating them, and they're collapsing. But they do manage to push back into Oman, managing to take part of the country, but they decide to retreat all their forces from the Yemeni and Omani regions, just so they can focus on keeping the mainland. This does go successfully, as they push back threats from Yemen to Yemen, and also push back around the outskirts of Mecca. So as they're now trying to spearhead to capture all these troops, so Saudi troops go running, they're like, all the Saudi troops are stationed all around here defending, so they all go running out this way, and once they're all out, the Egyptian and Iranian troops are too late, but do manage to cut them off. With the area being no one there, they just get completely collapsed, and they're now continuing to push further and further down into Saudi Arabia. Their goal is to capture this entire region here and probably force Saudi Arabia to surrender, but they aren't. They can keep making meetings with Turkey in order to liberate Israel and try and liberate Jordan. And that goes successfully. The counter-offensive takes Israel and all of Jordan back, as well as another counter-offensive that goes quite successfully into Saudi Arabia. An offensive from red team troops goes successfully in cutting off both of these nations. I think Kalabasha is the one that I can't do. But yeah, we see an offensive of red team troops, which takes back all of Armenia, pushes into Georgia, and nearly cuts off Turkey from Georgia and takes Azerbaijan. Meanwhile, though, Turkey is doing very well in Iraq as they push round and take the capital city, Baghdad. They managed to completely capitulate entire northern Iraq, and they're now pushing back into Saudi Arabian northern territory. This doesn't help those Iranians have now been cut off nearly completely from Saudi Arabia. I mean, they've got ports like all along here, land troops, but Turkey are now starting to shell their troops, as the Turkish naval dominance is about all around here. So Turkey begins to try and make landings in order to recapture parts of Saudi Arabia, but this is going unsuccessfully, as their plan still isn't completely complete, and the Egyptian troops are continuing to absolutely dominate into Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia then tries to make another counter-offensive, which goes kind of successfully in pushing back parts of Oman, which doesn't really... It goes okay. They don't manage to capture the capital city, which is like somewhere in this white area, I think, here. And rebels start to pop up, which does let Saudi Arabia get the upper hand on Oman. Now, with Red Team forces being driven out of everywhere, we see Turkey pushed back down into the part of Saudi Arabia, and they are pushing down to take Mecca. They do successfully, and Mecca is taken, and they push it around and cut off loads of Iranian troops. With this, Iran's front in Saudi Arabia is going quite badly, and a push into Egypt is started. With this, they completely lose a lot of their foothold in Saudi Arabia. Eventually, UAE drives their own forces out and Qatar is liberated. The forces are cut in two, and eventually we're just left to this front up here. With all blue team troops focusing, they now begin to push back the red team troops, capture all the Caucasus Mountain nations, and are now squaring up into Iran. Problem is that all of these places here, all the places here are mountains, which isn't good. Now I'm actually going to turn anti-aliasing off, but basically, yeah, that's what we see happen. So they continue to push into Iran, and eventually manage to take Tehran and take all the mountainous regions. This causes Iran to collapse, and the capitulation of Iran and Egypt is signed. With this, we now have blue team members winning. I mean, at the start, they were not winning. They were absolutely getting dominated. Turkey was doing very well for themselves. Very well. They were making themselves their own little empire, but the rest, no. Like, Saudi Arabia was getting absolutely slapped up. But, yeah. We're now going to take a look at a peace treaty. So, I'd say peace treaty wise, we're obviously going to have Turkey getting a lot of land. So they get all of... Oh, wow, that's big. They get all of Syria, which makes them look like a decent country. And Lebanon does opt to join in their sort of new big country. Israel does now fully get the Suez Canal given to them by Egypt, which does make Israel very happy, as now they've got a foothold. Now I'm just going to change this to about there, so it looks better. So now they own... Actually, that's ugly. So Egypt doesn't lose land a lot, but they have to pay war reparations. Israel now gets Palestine. Now, don't try and argue in the comments, because that's just silly. Jordan gets, like, literally nothing. They don't get anything. They just get most of Egypt's war reparations. Iraq loses land to basically everyone. So they lose bits of land to what's their name? Kuwait. Saudi Arabia does extend their borders out into what's the country called? Iraq, which does make Jordan look weird. So they send an ultimatum over to Jordan into taking these parts of land, which Jordan accepts since they're a good ally. But they say, Saudi Arabia says to him, do we have to cede over any land? And they say yes. So they cede over this part of the coast in order to get this part up here, which basically, I'm not just doing this because it makes the borders look better, it just makes the country look better. And the rest of Iraq does go over to Turkey, which is brilliant. Armenia and Azerbaijan are told to hug it out and become one country. And yeah, that's basically what's happened in the Middle East. This country here, the new Jordanese country, could unite with Israel, and that's what they do. So they decide in the peace terms to unite with Israel to make themselves stronger. And now we have quite a big buffer zone. I forgot something. So, Saudi Arabia does grab and take Yemen, but they don't really get it all, as Oman does get a sliver, not really a sliver, but like they get part of the land, which is there. Like, so the Qatari, and that's the wrong word, Qatar is completely annexed. And yeah, that's the Middle East. Oh, I forgot something. So, well, Iran, just basically they lose a tiny bit of land. Actually, no, Iran and Egypt have to pay war reparations, as they see if they took land from these countries here, it would just be very brutal. So now we're going to take a look at the alliance map. So this is the now newly formed WDO. Now, the WDO consists of all of these countries here. It stands for the World Defence Order. So you have Germany, Italy, Austria, Bosnia. So basically every single country except for Switzerland and Belarus in Europe is in the sort of area, including Turkey, which does decide to join, like, just decide to join. This is actually followed by Kuwait, who wants to join. They join for like a year, but then they leave, as they just don't see a point. They want to ally themselves more with Saudi Arabia. The Ukrainian specialists can't join, but this is basically what we see. Kaliningrad is released as its own country now, and they join in NATO to get protected against Russia or the WDO. And yeah, we haven't really seen a lot of changes. Now we're going to take a look at the CSTO. So this is the CSTO. We have all of these all of these members in, with an exception now of Iran and Egypt, who joined the CSTO. Mongolia, North Korea, and Xinjiang all joined the CSTO, followed by Pakistan, and Afghanistan is sort of trapped, so they decided to join. This does form a new pact, the PDO. So this is between the Republic of China, South Korea, Japan, and the Philippines. Oh, and Taiwan as well, but Taiwan owns China now. So yeah, between all of these countries, they now have a pact to defend themselves against the CSTO. Now, Tibet and Manchukuo want to stay sort of independent, not independent, but like far away. So that's what they do. We see another pact form up, which between these three countries here, which doesn't really last long, so they dissolve it. Finally, we get down to the most interesting part, the MEDA, the Middle Eastern Defence Alliance. So this is created by Saudi Arabia to basically fend off from CSTO aligned members such as Iran and Egypt, which also they are very perfectly aligned with NATO and they could integrate. So we see Oman, the UAE, Kuwait, which is a cool country, and the new Israel and Jordan sort of looking country. So now we see the entire of the Middle East in an alliance. We also see Jordan, Azerbaijan join the WDO. And yeah, that's the alliance map for now. It's huge. There's a lot of alliances. There's a lot of country members. We could see some rising tensions between these alliances. But for now, I'm looking at the expansion into Africa of the WDO. Now, we do see Algeria getting a government, which does join in favour of joining NATO or the WDO, and they do. And we see some other big war go on in Africa. Now, where is this war going to happen? Now, this war is going to happen along these countries here. So all these guys start to dislike each other, and all start to dislike Nigeria, who hasn't done anything wrong, who are backed by Chad and the Central African Republic. And that does break everyone out into some very, very bad war. And then this does just spread across Africa. And this is called Ding Ding Ding, Ethiopia, Egypt, round 2. Now, the Egyptian people are probably very unhappy. It's the amount of wars they've been getting into at the moment is probably really angering them. So we obviously have countries who see it out, but countries who sort of don't see it out. So these countries include like Libya, Algeria. No, Algeria doesn't join, but eventually we're going to see the sides. So it's Ethiopia versus Sudan again. These two hate each other. Eritrea, who is a firm Sudani ally, does join in on the war. Somaliland, who is a Ethiopian best friend, does join the blue side. The East African Federation joins the blue side, along with Congo, the Central African Republic, and Chad. These guys will join the red team. Cameroon joins the red team. Equatorial Guinea joins the red team. Brazzaville or something joins the red team. And the Republic of the Congo joins the blue team. For Nigeria, they don't like Cameroon. They join the blue team. So it does look very outnumbered. The US is involved in this. So this probably isn't going to go well for them. But we'll see. So we see an absolute storm into Nigeria by all of the nations. Or Cameroon, sorry. And they take Equatorial Guinea and Brazzaville. Now it's just these guys. Oh boy, what's going to happen to them? So we see a crossover into Eritrea, which goes successfully and takes the country. And eventually they just sort of, swarm in. They take the entire region and, well, no, that's not what happens. But basically this war gets very short as it just sort of, I'll just be dragging on and off because it ends in a stalemate. So they decide to do what they did last time. As both sides are very similar in power, they decide that if they just break up the land, it'll be easier for everyone. So that's what they decide to do. So Sudan, kind of gets punished. They lose Eritrea, which is one of the allies who gets knocked out. And that goes over to Ethiopia. The Republic of the Congo, which this wasn't I'm sorry. This wasn't part of the peace treaty. They just wanted to do this. The Republic of the Congo finally joins in on DR Congo, which makes DR Congo not landlocked anymore, which is brilliant. Equatorial Guinea just sort of joins Cameroon, and Cameroon joins Nigeria, which we now have a very nice looking Nigeria. A very nice looking Nigeria. Brazzaville, who was on the red team, does join DR Congo. As all these countries are quite poor, so might as well. This Angolan Panhandle does join in. And we do see a Central African Alliance formed, or Central African Federation. So now this includes all these countries, and it's the biggest country in Africa. It's cool to say it. It is. It's the now biggest country in the entirety of Africa. What else happened? So nothing else really happens. The CAR just gets a little bit of land out of Sudan. While Sudan gets a little bit of land out of Chad, all they get is this. Literally, that's it. They get this tiny piece of squarish looking land, which isn't a lot, but it will do the job. So yeah, now we have a lot of this happening, and tensions in the world are really high now. Russia hates the US, the US hates China, China hates the US, India hates China and Russia now. These guys hate Russia, NATO hates Russia, Russia hates NATO. You hate here, you hate them, you hate them. You hate them, 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 you hate them. So everyone hates each other. I think even India, who just gets mad as well, people just start hating on each other. So, chaos does start unfolding, sadly to say. And this does happen in Russia. So I wonder what does happen. So Kazakhstan is completely taken by Russian forces, and they state that even if the country fell, they were to never be released, which is quite sad. Now, I don't have the tool to release any countries, so that's just going to be what it is now. And they call themselves the Republic of Russia. They're huge. They want to take more land out of Ukraine, which Ukraine basically says, nah, bro. But they try and do it anyway. Ukraine says, nah, bro. And Russia goes in for round 2. I wonder what this is going to activate now. Now, this doesn't activate all of NATO, but this does activate another Ukrainian war. I just did the wrong thing. It doesn't activate any of NATO. NATO does start supplying them heavily. As basically now, they don't want any stuff going down. So Belarus, who's going to become a full part-time of Russia, joins in. And they both think, wonderful, we're going to have the entirety of Ukraine to ourselves now. That's not how they should think. They're going to get absolutely beaten like they do again. So Russia gets all its troops ready and invades up from Kherson. This invasion doesn't go the best, as they sort of get stuck as soon as they get in. That sounded really wrong. And they also push it into the north and don't manage to take Kiev. Ukrainian forces were really ready for this invasion, as they were getting ready to go against Russia. And the new Ukrainian government that's put in by Russia hates Russia and Belarus now. They push up into Belarus and managing to take Minsk. And Belarus is shown as a weak country. So Russian troops just roll in and kick back the Ukrainians all the way back to their own border. This does show that Russia is stronger than Ukraine, but Belarus is a letdown. Russia does continue to push into Ukraine and now gets them on all sides. And central Ukraine does fall. With central Ukraine falling, we see Russian landings in Odessa and pushes down into Lviv. Now, Ukraine is completely, capitulated, but not really. The government is toppled, they get a new government, and that does drive out most of the Ukrainian troops, or Russian troops. After a long year of fighting, Ukrainian troops, or Russian troops are forced out, and Ukraine literally says, right, we are going to take back all of the regions that Russia took from us. And that's what they do. So they push down into Kherson and the Zemstvo or something and manage to take it, along with Crimea. And Russia basically fully declares war on Ukraine, saying that it attacks them. Ukraine continue to push through and manage to take the Donbass region, and are now basically invading Russia. Would you ever think of that? Russia tries to use nuclear weapons, as you can probably see here. These basically fail and land in the Black Sea, with damaging a lot of Europe. I mean, if we have a look, the radiation does spread to countries here, which isn't good. All the radiation, so it lands, in the Black Sea, and the radiation spreads across Europe through the UK into Africa and most parts of Asia. So, yeah, the radiation does spread quite far, killing not a lot. It doesn't kill anyone. But now Russia has just been shown they can't even use nukes against Ukraine. They sort of look weak and pathetic, and they decide to sue for peace. Now, you're probably thinking, why is Russia suing for peace against a country that's 10 times smaller than them? Well, if they fail to use nukes, they can't threaten Ukraine anymore, since they can shoot them down. So they decide to roll with it. So what does Ukraine get back? Now, this probably isn't their exact borders, I think. We'd have a look at them. So that was it. So this isn't Ukraine's exact borders, but it's quite similar. So Ukraine gets these regions back. I'm actually going to do that, see if that works. Now, what does this do? Yeah, it makes it look worse. Yeah, but Ukraine gets most of their regions back. And just happy lives for them now. Ukraine does join in NATO or the WTO. And Russia's lost yet another ally. Now, it's getting quite embarrassing for Russia now, as they're losing allies left, right and centre. They don't like Kyrgyzstan or Tajikistan, but they managed to stay in the alliance. And Russia is basically trying to hate themselves against everyone now. So what is their alternative? Annex Belarus. Now, they sort of trying to show this off as a big thing, but this actually isn't really a big thing, because they got slapped around by Ukraine. Anyway, if you guys did enjoy this video, make sure to smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and join the Discord server in the link below. See you guys in the next one. Peace.